Well, hello, fellow travelers. I am Dr. Richard Hector. Welcome to Soucouyant, a Caribbean supernatural tale where we reimagine the Soucouyant, a character from the folklore of the Caribbean. Here, we follow her as she is depicted in Trinidad. Her depiction might be different in other places in the Caribbean. If you know about Soucouyant, I hope you like this reinterpretation. If you are new to Soucouyant, I hope you enjoy meeting this new character and that she motivates you to look into other folk characters, not only from the Caribbean, but also from other places. Episode 10, Soucouyant, a Caribbean supernatural tale. The reveal. In the previous episode, we learned that Mr. Lee was a narcissistic megalomaniac. He craved admiration, while at the same time he wanted to control and dominate others. He forced himself on the women he employed and took advantage of their desperate financial situations. He relished his incursion into the fabric trade and took delight in the distress of his competitors. In this episode, he is making his move on Gemma. However, she will turn the tables on him. On Saturday, Mr. Lee announced that he was closing early to take inventory. He asked for volunteers and promised overtime pay. Being familiar with the ploy, the woman told him the various reasons they had to leave. Miss Margarita volunteered. Gemma, you should stay and learn to take inventory. Come, let me show you something. She took Gemma by the hand and led her to the front of the store. She glanced behind to see that the other woman working in the store kept Mr. Lee occupied by asking questions related to selling different fabrics. Making sure he could not see them, she pulled Gemma off to the side behind some stacks of bolts of cloth and said, Listen, you don't have to stay. He's going to try something with you. You don't have to work here. I know plenty other fabric stores where you could get work, and no boss will try anything with you. Gemma surprised Miss Margarita with a smile and a hug. As she returned the hug, Miss Margarita felt a warmth course through her body. Gemma whispered in her ear, Not to worry. I know. Gemma completed the hug and kept her hands on both of Margarita's shoulders as she looked her in the face. The woman gasped because Gemma no longer looked like a bashful girl. She had the same features, but her brown eyes and expression revealed wisdom, love, and power beyond imagining. Slowly, recognition dawned on Margarita. Gemma smiled, and the woman returned her smile, but with temerity. Margarita bowed her head as she genuflected and said, Yes, Mama. Gemma lifted the woman's chin, but Margarita kept her eyes down, not meeting Gemma's. You can look at me. The woman obeyed. Yes, Mama. Gemma laughed softly and touched Margarita's bosom. It's not a command. You are good and kind, and you are my friend. Miss Margarita had a sharp intake of her breath. Gemma continued. I and my kind will never harm, but will protect you and your family. Miss Margarita swayed as if she was going to faint, but in that instant the bashful girl reappeared and laughed. Gemma said gently, Hold on now, hold on now. You're okay, you're okay, she stated rather than asked. Yes, Mama. I should leave this job. No, not at all. Stay here and work. Things are about to get much better. They began walking back to the group. Gemma continued. You know who I am? Yes, Mama. I heard about you all of my life growing up. Then you know you have to keep it to yourself? Yes, Mama. Her voice trembled slightly. Gemma. She put a hand in Margarita's as they walked. Yes, Gemma. I won't tell anybody. I'll take it to my grave. You won't have to do that, Gemma laughed. Her laughter sounded like birds chirping. Just nobody here. And give it a couple of years. Can you do that? Yes, Gemma. Do you need me to help you do that? I, I, I think so. Done, said Gemma. The woman felt the warmth spread through her body, starting from where their arms enfolded each other, and left self-assurance in its wake. She looked at Gemma with confidence shining through her gaze and said, Thank you, Gemma. On seeing the two women return arm in arm, Mr. Lee had a slight doubt about his strategy working. Perhaps Gemma was alerted to his strategy and advised on how to frustrate his desire. His heart leapt as he looked at her lithe body, chocolate-colored skin, her smooth, unblemished complexion, and her innocent demeanor. Another worker, Anne, attempted to extricate Gemma with a suggestion. "We're going down to the square for peanut punch. Why don't you grab your purse and come too?" Once they had got her out of the store, they would make certain she did not return, at least until Monday. Gemma bowed her head shyly and said, I... While she stammered, she touched Miss Margarita's forearm as if for reassurance. But unnoticed by the others, she softly tapped the forearm with her ring finger. Miss Margarita interrupted Gemma and looked boldly at Anne while she spoke to the group. "It's okay. She should stay." Then Miss Margarita turned her gaze to Mr. Lee. "She needs to learn how to work here." A small smile touched the corner of his mouth. He thought, she just earned a raise and her Christmas bonus. She nodded at him. "Right, Mr. Lee? You will teach her good, yes?" He beamed and said, Yes, of course. I am the best teacher she will ever have." She turned to Gemma and said, "You will be a good girl and learn well, yes?" Gemma nodded, and without raising her eyes. "Yes, Miss Margarita." "Good." She untwined their arms and turned to the others. "Gather up your things, ladies. I have to make market. I can't go for punch with you all." Anne looked at Miss Margarita puzzled, but supported the decision. "Okay. I have a bunch of clothes to wash this Saturday. Miss Margarita, I could walk you to the taxi stand." In a flurry of activity, mixed with a fair amount of guilty relief, the other women gathered up their belongings and headed out of the air-conditioned store into the mid-morning heat and sunshine. They were uncomfortable leaving Gemma in that awkward and dangerous situation. But suppose Gemma would have to face such a situation sooner or later, working in fabric stores in Trinidad. They rationalized that she might as well face it now, sooner rather than later. They all did, and all survived. They'll help her through it next week. Nevertheless, they asked Miss Margarita, why was it that she seemed to throw the child into the briar patch? Miss Margarita laughed and mysteriously said that sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted. When they pressed her to elaborate, she just told them to stay out of things that did not concern them. Then she changed the subject. They acquiesced out of respect for her, but she knew they would continue the discussion over their peanut punch when she left them. As she sat in the taxi wending its way through the traffic to the highway, heading to Arima, she looked at the 5 passengers in the taxi. 2 sat in front, next to the driver, and 3 in the back seat. She sat against the door. Another woman sat next to her in the middle. The woman was accompanied by a man who sat against the other door. They leaned close as the woman related a story to the man. Miss Margarita thought everyone in the car was normal-looking, regular persons sharing the taxi with her. She wondered if any were like Gemma, but all looked as mundane as she was when she left home that morning. With a sigh, she let her gaze drift out the window to the people going about their business in the bustle. The woman next to her paused briefly at the sound of the sigh, then returned to her conversation. Miss Margarita observed how ordinary everything appeared. No one looked odd or out of place. She thought of how ordinary Gemma looked before revealing her true self. She wondered how many of what Gemma termed "my kind" were walking around the country like nobody's business. She shuddered involuntarily. The woman sitting next to her looked at her with concern. Are you okay, ma'am? She asked. Yes, I'm fine, thank you, replied Miss Margarita. With that, the woman nodded and returned to her conversation, leaving Miss Margarita to her own thoughts. Mr. Lee locked the door after letting the woman out of the store. He said to Gemma, I'm locking the front because we'll be starting inventorying in the back, and I don't want any thieves coming in the front. Yes, Mr. Lee, responded Gemma, and walked to the back of the store. At the back of the store she paused and asked, Do I start at the bottom or the top, Mr. Lee? I like to start at the top, he replied. Take down that bolt there, so we can get the number. Gemma had to bend over bolts stacked as high as a countertop. Expensive fabrics were arranged vertically against the wall, not within reach of browsing customers. Customers who wanted to see them had to call a salesgirl. He pointed to a light blue polyester chiffon bolt that she had to bend and really stretch to reach. While on her tiptoes, he pressed against her rear and draped his body over hers. She could smell alcohol and cigarettes on his breath.